and welcome to today's Coffee with the Cause. So for the benefit of for Heather and the team from the Ideas Foundation, it's very, very informal session. We just want to hear from you about the work that you're doing, the cause that you're supporting, and really it's about brainstorming and coming up with ideas for how we might be able to support you, whatever that looks like, whether it's introductions or work that we've done or experience we can share, connections we can make, that kind of thing. So no pressure, just very, very informal chat, and we're all here to help you achieve better outcomes for the Ideas Foundation. So Heather and I met digitally because we've met everything. I've never met anybody on this call in person, I don't think, but we met about 3-4 months ago. We'd connected over LinkedIn, actually, hadn't we, Heather? And we set up a call, and I was really blown away, actually, by the work that you're doing and the journey that you've been on. So, Heather, I wonder if you could just share a little bit of insight about you and what inspired you to create the Ideas Foundation.
So, just a bit of background. So, I was involved in the Ideas Foundation from my work in Hackney. I was working in Hackney when it was a failing authority. It wasn't trendy, it wasn't sort of the Shoreditch sort of trendiness and gentrification, but it was a really tough area in terms of education. It was regarded by David Blunkett at that time as the worst authority in the UK, and it was a failing authority. Nobody wanted to come into Hackney at that stage, but in my work as on education strategy, I was doing 14 to 19 strategy and education strategy for the borough. Somebody called Robin White came into the offices in a very bright pink and purple suit and was talking about the need to develop more creativity in boroughs like Hackney and to try and look at creating a talent pipeline into the advertising industry specifically. I now know that he had what is, I think, sometimes people call vaporware. He had a brand, which was the Ideas Foundation, but no money, but a really strong vision that he felt that actually the creative industry should be much more inclusive and diverse, much more diverse. And we started in Hackney. We trialed different approaches to that program, which included just taking students into advertising agencies and putting them in for work experience, and it didn't work. We found that actually students needed a lot more preparation in terms of those experiences, and the agencies weren't ready for the students either. So from that initial concept, we've evolved the programs into a range of different creative experiences for young people, typically secondary school and further education colleges, which give them an experience of the creative industries. We're also looking at developing creative skills for young people that might prepare them to work in industries that value creativity. So it might be the broader sector, including engineering, artificial intelligence, other skills. We're looking at the broader skills development side. And typically our funding was originally through grant funding. I managed to get quite a lot of money through things like Aim Higher and government funding programs at the time, which were quite generous in Hackney at the time. We then moved to a funding model where we used agencies and Robin's contacts. He had been president at Engine and was the founder of WCRS. At that time, he was able to leverage a lot of contacts through other agency colleagues. That funding has subsequently dried up. The School of Communications Arts is doing a lot more in that field at the moment and has taken quite a bit of that agency funding, although they're struggling. And then the model that we've now been moving to is working with brands, and we've had significant funding from Burberry, from Canon, from ITV, from Pantene. So we're getting more funding from the brands, and we're moving perhaps further away from being specifically about getting students into advertising, because I think the advertising industry itself has changed, and looking much more at equipping young people to go into the creative industries and understanding the process of marketing and all the different decision-making skills that go along the way. So I think that's pretty well in a nutshell. And on the team here, if it's appropriate, I've got Ted Smith, who's the chair of the charity, Helen Poole, who is our creative programs director, and Emma Hope, who was with Canon, who's now, we've managed to lure across to the Ideas Foundation. So that's the team that we've got. I hope that helps.
Perfect, thank you. And Ted, Emma, Helen, do feel free to pitch in and share your experiences as well. I mean, and also, by the way, Heather, that was quite a humble introduction, because I'm reading the notes here and it says you have a master's degree in careers, education and guidance. You're a fellow of Queen Mary University of London, and you're a space ambassador, which just sounds like a phenomenal title to me. So I'd love to know more about that. But yeah, so I mean, today's session, you know, the way we normally run these is to understand a little bit more about the social problem is that you're trying to address, and your current way of achieving that behavior change or that social impact. You know, how are you bringing about that change at the moment? And then maybe we can then start to brainstorm a little bit about, you know, with the people on this call, what are the specific skills, experiences, insights, connections that they can share to help you achieve that ambition. So, you know, could you tell us a little bit more perhaps about, and maybe using the case studies that you mentioned there, the Can and the Burberry, the Pan 10, how is it that you're trying to deliver change for these young people and getting them access to learn new skills or to get opportunities in these industries?
So just a little bit of background that my colleagues can probably chip in. So one of the problems we've got is that creativity is being squeezed out of the curriculum because of a lot of the government changes in terms of essentially English Baccalaureate Progress 8. There's been a real strong emphasis on English, maths and science, and a number of the creative subjects have been squeezed out of the curriculum. On design, but also within the traditional subjects like English, it's become quite formulaic. So for example, if you look at English, there's less emphasis on creative writing. There used to be modules that looked at media studies. It's become quite formulaic. So yeah, and it's really sad. And it's frustrating because we know that there's a number of young people who are incredibly talented. Some of them are from neurodiverse backgrounds, dyslexic, autistic, just creative, who aren't thriving in the education system at the moment. So what we've been trying to do is to devise programs that we can actually get into schools, particularly in deprived areas. We started doing a lot of work in London, then moved to Manchester, working in Salford. But lately we've been, and moved into a lot of work in Yorkshire. We've also been getting to work into very rural areas. So for example, as part of the Canon project, we worked in West Cumbria, and that was funded partly by a Sellafield social value proposition. And we worked with one form entry secondary schools in the middle of nowhere who get nobody to come and visit. Through another project, we were doing some work with Burberry in Scarborough, which again, some of the schools that we're working with in sort of those sort of areas have very, very little. They've got high staff turnover. There's very little creative engagement. So what we've been trying to do is devise programs that we can actually flexibly bring into schools, either one-day programs, two-day programs, five-day programs, where we bring in expert tutors, really inspirational tutors. And we've got phenomenal people that we work with, bring in people from the brands, and get the students working on something that they can see is real life. So it's not theoretical. They can be creative. They can get into the flow. It isn't actually structured by lesson. It's about project-based learning. And so, for example, this week, we've just finished a project with ITV, working in Castleford, an ex-mining town in Yorkshire. And the students have had 2 days off curriculum where they've just been immersed in a creative project. So those are the sorts of experiences we've been doing in school, but also we have, when we've had funding, offered summer schools where students self-select. So students that we know are quite interested in this, we then try and get them to come in during the summer holidays. And previously, when we have had funding, we've then tried to get a program of visits for young people to go into places like Facebook or Karmarama, Ogilvy, Media City, so that they can continue that interest and develop, if you like, a tribe of people who have got a similar interest in creativity. Because if you're creative in sort of Whitehaven, sometimes you haven't necessarily got a network of people to sort of encourage you around there.
And Heather, the impact that you and the team have is really quite significant, isn't it? So reading here again that last year you worked with about 15,000 young people, and also to underline why this is such an important piece of work that you're doing and such an important cause to support. Last year, 92% of creative jobs in the UK were held by the most advantaged in society. So if we want to really make our workplaces more diverse, more inclusive, we've got to change that statistic, haven't we? We've got to look at that 92%. It really is quite phenomenal.
No, I agree totally. Yeah.
I'll open it up to the floor now. We've heard a little bit from Heather about her passion for supporting young people into the creative and tech industries. We've heard a little bit about the Ideas Foundation and the kind of work that they're doing. But just, we've got a bunch of people on this call, people who work in marketing, they work for brands, they work in agencies, they work in creative agencies, media agencies, all number of different roles. And I'm sure they're going to be able to share some really killer insights and ideas and experience with the Ideas Foundation team. So does anybody on the call want to open it up with some questions?